Tēnā koutou e te iwi. Ha ki te ha, manawa ki te manawa. Tihei mauri ora. Kia rongo koutou ki te reo irirangi or Tune Me In podcast. Today I'm speaking with Shain Shapiro, author of This Must Be the Place, How Music Can Make Your City Better. Shain is the founder of Sound Diplomacy, a consultancy that has worked with over 130 cities worldwide to develop their music ecosystems. And what's really fascinating is his journey from being a musician to being someone who studies how music can literally transform cities. So, Shain, if you wouldn't mind, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with consulting with cities about music policy? Because I would love to follow in your footsteps.
I'm not sure you do. I was never really a musician, or a really bad one. But I've worked in the industry all my life since I was a teenager, and not out of choice. Just happened. So how did I do this? I think I'm a little bit of luck, certainly, but I've always been kind of doing my own thing. Like I set up businesses when I was a teenager as well, and I don't think I've ever been a very good employee. But I've worked across the music industry in most sides of it, not every single one, but I've worked in live, I've worked for record labels, I've worked in policy and in government. So I was kind of lucky to have a bit of a broad swath of understanding of how things work. And I've also been lucky to travel a lot with work. Before I set up Sound Diplomacy, I had a pan-European role that enabled me to travel quite a lot. And having obviously grown up in Canada, but I've moved overseas to the UK and Europe a long time ago. So it all kind of, I'm fascinated by places and cities and obsessed with music. So it kind of all came to a head when I started to see a lot of things that were, not working here in London where I live that could have been working better, where music was not a part of a conversation that it should have been, or some things could have been improved through better dialogue, better understanding of how music works. And kind of I became a bit obsessed with this idea that music can be a tool to improve other things. And then I realized my future wasn't in the music industry traditionally. After working in it for 20 years, that really wasn't where I wanted to be and where I wanted to go, but I wanted to work with music. So this just kind of happened over time and happy accidents and being a part of some projects and things like that. And now I've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Would you mind just explaining briefly what a music city is, especially the ideas around musical ecosystems and what that involves?
Yeah. So, the concept of a music ecosystem is the same as any other ecosystem. It is a bunch of different things that impact each other. So if one side of it is struggling, it has a ripple effect across the entire ecosystem, like any supply chain, like any natural ecosystem in the environment, right? We all hate wasps until we need them. I believe with music, there's kind of an approach that if you understand that everything impacts everything else, then if there's a lack of education provision on one side of it, then it impacts the creation of audiences and the development of artists to fill the venue down the road. So we look at music ecosystems as a series of component parts that tackled individually actually have collective impact. And then you can start to understand how it works by understanding how a place works, literally and figuratively. Places are just groups of people making decisions about what to spend money on and what not to spend money on, and what to focus on and what not to focus on, and what to build, what not to build, where to do it, how to do it, all these kinds of things. Some of the decisions are made, for collective benefit, some are made for individual benefit, but music has a part to play in a lot of that, especially if we want it to be involved in in the fabric of our communities. If we all believe that music is something that we need or something that we want, then it's best for us to create a structure to understand how it works and how best to engage with it, how to ensure that it is supportive of all community members, things like that. And So we built a way of thinking about this, and then we built a data set to understand how it works financially, which is unfortunately the most important thing to most decision makers, but also socially and culturally. And then once you start to understand how it works and you build a data set around it, then you can make better decisions of what to prioritize and what not.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what it is.
That's cool. So, one of the things I picked up through reading the book was this idea that policies that have nothing to do with music, like liquor license policies, can severely impact music. So, for example, one of the examples was in order to maintain a liquor license, you could only have a band playing a certain genre, or they could only play covers, or they could only be acoustic, those kinds of things that are not music decisions, but liquor license decisions that then
Hmm.
impact music. Is that something you've seen a lot around the world?
Yeah, so it's quite common for music to be governed by things that have nothing to do with music. So music is innately tied to having fun, so to speak. And fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of people have fun by consuming alcohol in public with other people. And alcohol needs to be controlled and managed. It is poison, like any other poison in that sense. But unfortunately, what happens is the restrictions that are often rightly placed on alcohol have a significant adverse impact on simple access of putting music on. So there are many parts of the world where you can't get a live music license unless you go through a rigorous liquor licensing process, right? So, and this creates a stigma where you just think of anyone going to see live music as just there to get drunk, and it takes the true value of the music away. So we always advocate for a community to create a music policy based on music, not based in an alcohol and liquor policy based on alcohol and liquor.
Mm,
And we've seen a lot of countries transform their policies. Australia is a great example of that. Australia has had some very, very arcane liquor licensing laws that date back to prohibition. America has similar issues in certain places, and it makes it very difficult to have a thriving live music ecosystem if you don't have regulatory infrastructure that understands that the music exists independently of everything around it.
mm. Just to add to that, something else you mentioned was some policies don't differentiate between music and noise. And so outdoor performances would be classed as a nuisance, a noise nuisance. Do you think becoming a music city and having a strategy in place kind of solves those kinds of problems?
Yeah, well, music is an intensely personal thing, right?
Mm,
Like as I say, when I say the word music, it means something to you, which is different to what it means to me or means to anybody else. It's core to our being.
mm,
Some people are obsessed with it, some people don't care as much, right? But everyone has some sort of personal relationship with it that is uniquely theirs. Making, and it's a really terrible way to develop policy, is to do it through a personal emotional connection to something, right?
mm,
People make really bad decisions because they don't see that governance is about the collective benefit. So lots of decisions get made based on people in charge may not understand or get the music that is being regulated. There's also, this comes back to systemic and structural racism and classism and gender issues and things like that. But you often see certain types of music overregulated because of a lack of cultural understanding or a power imbalance of who's making decisions versus who's making the music. So we advocate for kind of a genre agnostic approach. You know, it can't be too loud at 11 p.m. if you're in a residential neighborhood, of course. But one of the challenges that we face in the world is how buildings are built and how
mm.
outdoor spaces are designed. And these are all intentional decisions that are made by people that in some places could be made better, and music tends to be the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, of when things are going wrong in a place. And usually the reason why has absolutely nothing to do with the music. It has something to do with building codes or planning or construction or all sorts of other things that have nothing to do with music.
So one example of that might be those grassroots venues shutting down that you talked about in London in your book. Is that right?
Yeah, this happens everywhere. There's a housing crisis in every major city in the world. There certainly is that in New Zealand too, and an affordability crisis. We need to find places for people to live, but we kind of forget sometimes that, I kind of call it like places to live for rather than just places to live. Like people have to have stuff around them, right? So, often in a necessary urgency to build more housing, planning laws are not adapted, so to speak, to understand what is around them.
Mm,
So sometimes you have residential being built next to existing cultural uses, bars, restaurants, things like that. And what happens is people, you know, you want a vibrant environment to live until you have a kid. And people get frustrated because they can't sleep. And I can understand that. I haven't had as much sleep as I wanted to, last few days. So I get it. But the solution to that is to stop the music. And that's I don't think that that's the right solution.
mm,
So you end up with a lot of venues that are not able to trade simply because they exist, but they existed before the residential. And we would advocate if we're rebuilding, rethinking neighborhoods, then we have to do it properly so we can protect the existing businesses that are there that are acting responsibly.
mm. So that must be part of the Music City strategy is those kind of construction guidelines around soundproofing and balconies facing the right way and all that kind of stuff that mitigates, so you can build like apartment buildings next to venues and still get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, exactly. You can do both. You can do well and do good at the same time.
Yeah, and I suppose it just comes down to the regulations being in place because if I was building an apartment building, maybe I don't want to spend the extra money to make it soundproof. I'd rather somebody else had to spend that money. But if the regulations are in place, then I have to if I want to build there. So that's where it comes down to being at the government or the local government level.
Yeah, it's all down to everything is down to policy. Yeah, it is. Like that's the buck stops with the governance.
Mm,
People get upset with developers. Developers are just doing their job. They're just building. It's about the rules and the requirements that are set to ensure that what is being built is fit for purpose.
mm,
I don't blame builders. I blame policymakers.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Now, just speaking to our audience of music teachers and educators, where do you see music education fitting into this bigger picture of a music city?
It's everything. But the thing is, education needs to be reimagined. Teaching a whole bunch of kids to play violin is all well and good and sing, but if they have no business skills and understand the music industry, then you're just setting them up to fail. That's first off, or to get screwed over. At the second, also, but music education is all about creating audiences of the future as much as musicians of the future. So we have to enshrine that in public education. Without music education, there is no music ecosystem. It's the soil, that everything grows from. You can't grow fruit without really good soil. And
Mm,
that is and that soil needs to be nourished and tended to and understood and watered and all that stuff. And that's education
mm,
across all forms, not just kids, but providing vocational and technical education and services to, older people, all sorts of things.
So that kind of spills into community music as well.
Yes, very much so.
Cool. At the moment, music education is kind of taking a back seat in our curriculum in preference for maths and English and those kinds of what they call core subjects. So, as music teachers, we have to fight for our programs and our budgets. Is there any argument that you make in your book that we could use to advocate for music education?
I think we have to stop separating music education as its own thing, first off, and exceptionalizing it because we're not winning. I also think we have to really push back on, I think, the just sheer offensiveness of the word STEM. I think it's ridiculous and incredibly offensive because engineering and maths and science and technology are all arts, right? Music is math,
Yeah.
engineering is art. Even the design of the word STEM requires an artist, right? So it's ridiculous. So I think that we have to look at education holistically and say that all education fails without music education.
Mm,
And that's everything from, addressing truancy and addressing attention and cognitive development and all sorts of things in kids. Music is an incredibly powerful tool. And it's this really stupid society that cuts that. And unfortunately, we have no shortage of that in the world right now.
yeah, yeah. I teach high school music and the subjects are all siloed. So I'll get a group of year nines for 2 hours every week. So it sounds like you're advocating for not siloing subjects, but having them in a more integrated, maybe a project based or something more kind of integrated into the real world. Is that kind of the kind of thing that you envision?
I don't have enough experience in that world, to be honest, to advocate for anything. I just feel that I'm not sure 2 hours a week is enough, but music should just be seen as integral as math, science, technology, and everything else. It shouldn't be over there. It shouldn't be an elective. It should just be
Yeah.
part of the curriculum.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Wholeheartedly agree with that. Okay. So I know that we're winding up because you've got a lot of other things to do today. So if I could just see about getting a couple of practical takeaways for my audience. If a music
Hmm.
teacher listening wanted to help their community become more music friendly, what do you think they could do to get started? What would be their first step?
Have as many public events featuring their kids as possible. I think get the kids performing live in fairs and food, in farmers markets and choirs, and get the kids out there because it will build their confidence
Mm.
and create a connection with the community that demonstrates how important music education in high school is.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously, I guess insurance purposes, I'm not sure, but kids go on school trips all the time. So get it out of the classroom.
Mm. Oh, yeah. Start performing. Go busking, for example. Take your class busking.
Yeah, in an organized and structured way. Yes. Don't just stick them on the street and hope for the best.
No, no, of course not. No. Always safety first. Okay. Another thing to think about from all of your work with cities, what's one policy change that you would say made the biggest difference for local musicians and for music educators?
There's two. One is it's basic. It's a recognition of the city that music is important. It's a statement that music is a priority economic area. It's not just in the Department of Culture. That's one, certainly. It's hard to say when I think about things as an ecosystem, but I think the having a strong planning policy, this is things that musicians don't see but really matters. So having the agent of change principle implemented, which is the thing that protects venues from new real estate developments, and having a really robust planning system that protects culture in the community and celebrates it.
Mm,
These are things that low individual artists don't see but are hugely important.
mm. Yeah, like before I got on this call, I had a look, and Auckland is a city of music, but I wouldn't know it unless I searched it up.
They
So
they are retiring that brand, actually, unfortunately, because the person who was leading it resigned and they're not replacing him. Um,
yes,
so it's a little different, but Auckland, there are certainly some amazing people in the city in Auckland that are doing great work to protect and support music, to create better planning policy along like K Road and other things like that.
yes. I'm a university student at the moment, and I go onto Queen Street quite regularly. And you walk up and down Queen Street, there'll be three or four different musical performers. Like every block, there'll be somebody out there with a microphone and a speaker playing the guitar and singing. So, like, it's certainly a lot more vibrant than it was maybe 10 years ago when I was in the city.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
This is structural stuff, right? So it takes a long time, and the city it's not a either or.
mm,
Like it is a music city or isn't. Every city that has music and musicians in it is a music city. It's about the policies and the intentionality of the community to recognize and invest in music.
yeah, and there's no saying that somebody might not step up in the future and we can reclaim that title of Music City.
No, no. Well, you can't technically lose it. So I'm sure that someone will come along.
Yes, well, hopefully one of our listeners will step into that space, and you never know.
Well, contact the city's Department of Economic Development. I think they'll hopefully be looking for someone new.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Okay, so just another couple of questions before I let you go. What's one thing about the relationship between music and cities that would surprise most people?
The amount of money that actually gets invested into music using public dollars everywhere. People complain that there isn't investment in music in communities. That's not true. There is pretty much everywhere. It's just how it's done can sometimes be a bit opaque or a bit behind the scenes. There's
Hmm,
a lot of money. Money is not the problem.
okay.
It's never the problem. It's decisions, it's priorities, it's politics. It's not money.
Hmm, okay. I'll have to ponder that for a bit because I think what you're talking about is money spent on infrastructure. Is it things like public transport that gets people to concerts? And is it that kind of level of spending that is happening behind the scenes that we can't see?
Yeah, and within healthcare, within education, all sorts of things. It's just people there could be more money, but there is money. It's not about money to me often. It's about priorities.
Yeah. Okay. It's about making choices and what you value is where you put the money.
Hmm. And how you communicate it.
Yeah. Okay. A last bit of advice for our music teachers. If you could give them one piece of advice about their role and their community, what would it be?
Recognize your power and your influence. Stop complaining and start organizing and be confident. You know, imagine a city without you. Imagine a city without music. There's a huge amount of power and influence that music art educators could have if they, explain the economic benefits that they deliver, if they explain how they're making kids' lives better, literally
Mm.
improving mental health. So don't sell yourself short.
Okay, I think that's a nice moment to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you again for this awesome book. I'm actually using it as part of my PhD thesis. I'm using the idea of the musical ecosystem to support the work I'm doing, bringing formal music education into community music spaces. And understanding musical ecosystems is one of the first steps I'm using to design my project. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Cool. Well, good luck. Nice to meet you. Thanks for your time. And yeah, send me whatever comes of this, just send it over.
Yeah, will do. Cool. And yeah, thanks again. I'll let you get on with your day.
All the best. Okay.
You
Bye.
too. Bye. Nā mihi whakanuia kia Bradley me te whare crescendo. Nā mihi anō kia Lions Foundation mō te putia tautoko. E te iwi, ko Jessica tēnei, mā te wā.